Good morning, Morai, Vrabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and we are on Daf Gimel, Amud. We're really by the first wide line, but we're going to go back up to the fifth line from the top of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned as is Chut Refuah Shelema for Daniela Bat Rachel and Manzal Bat Salterut Koltash, dedicated by Dan family. Also dedicated anonymously for Refuah Shelema of Daniel Moshe ben Farangis, also dedicated anonymously for Refuah Shelema of Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, also dedicated by Taban family for Refuah Shelema of Sarah Bat Mina, and dedicated Le'ilui Nishmat Shoshana Bat Yehuda by Tzadik family, Le'ilui Nishmat Mordechai ben Jalal and Muhtaram Bat Mordechai by Bar Koller family, and the Ilui Nishmat Bitzalel ben Rafael Vester by Mabubi families. The learning of the community, all learning of community this month has been graciously dedicated by Shei family and Mabubi families. Should be an ultimate for all their mishmachot. Amen. So we started a piece in the Gemara after having proven that by the kings we count in the Shtetl. Gemara said that's only for Jewish kings, but by Malchei Umot we count from Tishrei. We had our own 2 cents that we put in, that Malchei Yisrael are the continuation of the Malchut of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from the day that we became a nation to him in Chodesh Nisan by Yetziat Mitzrayim, Vatem tiyu li la'am, but by Malchei Umot HaOlam, their extension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's government in the world, left Hashem. Baruch Hu controls the decisions and the heart of a king, and therefore that from Tishrei, which is Tishrei, to prove that we actually do. Tachshasta starting the pasuk in Nehemiah. Now we mentioned Nehemiah was probably 50% of the job. Ezra and Nehemiah together building the platform for the rebuilding of the Jewish communities back in Yerushalayim, and ultimately building the Beit HaMikdash. And he was very close to the king of Paras, to Artaxerxes, as we'll see who that is. And he was the butler, actually. He was a confidant of the king. The king loved him, and he used that leverage to allow not just permission, but also funds and guards and protection for the Jews in Yerushalayim to go ahead and rebuild the Beit HaMikdash. And Pasuk Aleph of Perek Aleph, Mamash, the first pasuk of Sefer Nehemiah, he says, Esrim l'Artaxerxes, that is, he was in the 20th year of Artaxerxes in Chodesh Nisan, and then that is the second pasuk. Beginning is Kislev Shnat Esrim. So from Kislev to Nisan, if Nisan was Rosh Hashanah Melachim, it should have become 21st, not 20th. And then Mara says, well, wait a second. Maybe Perek Bet was before Perek Aleph and Muktam Mukhar Torah. That's where we got into this story. We said that it can't be that chronology is not kept in Perek Aleph and Bet because it's telling his story. And you can't mess with the story. The storyline is that Nehemiah was close to the king. And he says in the beginning in Perek Aleph how Hanani, his friend, came to him from the Jewish settlement of communities left over after the Churban in Yerushalayim. And he tells him, how are the Jews doing? And he says, horrible. You have no idea how bad is bad. And he goes on to say there's no walls. Everyone is persecuted. And it's a horrible reality. And what he told him in Kislev, it took Nehemiah a few months until he found a good window to talk to Artaxerxes, to the king, about it. And the way that came about is a confrontation from the king himself. Now, we mentioned that he was the butler, and says the pasuk over here, Tanya Dvarim Sha'amar Hanani Nehemiah, again starting from the 5th, 6th line from the top of the Amud. Amara Nehemia lemelech benisan. Farim shamar Hanani leNehemia bekislev. How do I know that these words were said? The whole situation was reported to Nehemia. Is Divra Nehemia ben Chachalia. This is mamash the first beginning Sukim of Sefer Nehemia. Vayibachodesh Kislev. It was in Kislev of the 20th year, and I was in Shushan Abir. I was in the capital city of Shushan, which is, by the way, not Hamadan. It's the only city that it can't be, right? Really, I believe, and I've visited that city before we came to the west. It's a city called Shush or Shustar. The kever of Daniel is actually very much glorified by the Muslim community around there, which I davened at. It's a discussion for itself. I've written a halachic piece on it for those who are interested, but nevertheless, I was in the capital city of Shushan, says Nehemiah, and he says, my brother, my friend, good friend, Hanani, him and his people, his friends from Yehuda, from Yerushalayim, came. I asked them about the situation of the Jews, the remnants of Sherita Pleta from the aftermath of the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, Shenisharu min Hashevi Van Yerushalayim. I asked them about the city of Yerushalayim. V'amruli, they said, Anishtarim asher nisharu, the people who've left behind, B'medina b'ra'ah gedola, they are in a horrific situation. U'becherpa, they are disgraced. V'chomat Yerushalayim meforeset, the walls are breached. The sha'ara nitzu ba'esh, the gates are burnt. And these words, Amara Nehemia lemelech benisan. That leads to the next part, next phase, next episode of this story in Perek Bet of Sefer Nehemiah, which is his dialogue with the king, saying over the situation to Artaxerxes, Shenemar. And this is the second passage, right? And that's why the chronology has to follow first Perek Aleph, then Perek Bet, because it says, it was in Nisan of this 20th year. Imagine if we would count for Artaxerxes from Nisan, this would have been 21st, right? But it's 20th, and that's the whole proof that we count from Tishrei, from Nisan. But the story is, Yain lefanav, the wine is in front of King Artaxerxes. I picked up the wine, obviously it was the butler, giving it to the king, and I was never before in a bad mood in front of him. I was always happy and jolly, and today I wasn't. And the king tells me, so why you look so bad? I know you're not sick. This is because you're plotting to kill me. You're trying to kill me. Now, the Fashir explained that the little backdrop of this story is, back in the day, right, especially probably realizing that this was after the story of Achashverosh with Bigtan Avateresh, right? Bigtan Avateresh, they tried to poison the king as well. And now that was Nichtav B'Sefer, but any king really had this, that every food that they ate was already eaten by the Shivim Zakenim. Like they had a whole lineup of the poor subjects that they had to eat it to make sure those people actually got good free food. But they had to eat or drink what the king had to eat or drink to make sure that nothing's going to go wrong as far as poisoning the king is concerned. And the butler had to drink with him. But since the Chodesh Kislev, of when he heard this story, he said, I can't drink wine. My brothers are in such a situation, I'm going to be drinking alcoholic beverages. No, I'm not doing it. As he stopped tasting the wine, so he could get away with it, perhaps because he was friendly with the king. But at some point, he's not drinking. He doesn't look good. Enze imralev. This is something is brewing beneath the surface. The king said, "You want to kill me?" Obviously, when the king says that to you, confronting you, kings of back in yesteryear, you would be panicked, and that's exactly what happened to Nehemiah ben Chachalia. Says the Gemara, Enze ki imralev. I was petrified. Says Nehemiah. Harbe meod, very much. Ve'omar melech. But he collected himself, and look at what he answered. Right? Long live the king. Long live the king. Madua lo yira'u panai. Why shouldn't I look so bad? You know why I look so bad? Asher ha'ir bet kivrot avotai, because the city of my paternal bet hakvarot, our place, Sarva, is destroyed. Shara uklum ha'esh, and its gates are burnt. And he tells him the whole rundown of what Hanani had told him. And the king, now realizing what has happened, says to him, so what do you want? Right? Tachlis, what do you want? What are you asking? And he uttered the tefillah, under his breath before he said to the king, and I told the king, if it is straight in your eyes, if it's good in your eyes, and if you love me, Asher tishlacheni el Yehuda, please send me to Yehuda, to Yerushalayim, el ir kivrot avotai. I want to go and visit the cemetery of my patriarchs. I want to rebuild the city of my patriarchs. Right? This must have been after he had some good wine, right? Obviously, Lev Melech Biat Hashem. He says to him, V'hashkal yoshevet etzlo, and the shkal was sitting next to him. We'll see in the future shiurim next staff. We'll see who this shgal is, or what this shgal is sitting next to him. Ad matai ma'alachecha u'matai tashu. Says, okay, tachlis. How long do you need? Okay, I'm going to send you. How long you need? When are you going to come back? And he liked the idea. He sent me off, and I gave him a time for my return. So obviously, you see from here that Perek Bet comes after Perek Aleph, and hence you see from here that in Kislev is the 20th year, and in Nisan is the 20th year. So obviously, you're not counting from Nisan, because Nisan would have been the beginning of the 21st year. So mitishri manina. So this whole Amud, we proved so far from the story, it's great to have a little piece of Jewish history over here. But the point at discussion is for Malchei Umot Haolam mitishri manina. So it says the Gemara Mativ Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, okay, if I'm a beautiful story, I have a kasha. It's not a kasha. V'yom 24 lechodesh b'shishi b'shnat shtayim l'Daryavish. He brings another counter raya from also the psukim, and he says this is in the 6th year of King Daryavish. This is a pasuk in Haggai, in the first perek in pasuk tetvav b'yom 24 lechodesh b'shishi b'shnat shtayim l'Daryavish HaMelech. And afterwards, in the beginning of Perek Bet, mamash afterwards, it says Shvi'i, in the 7th month, ב-21 לחודש, היה דבר השם ביד חגי הנביא לאמור. Right? This is Haggai, Perek Bet, Pasuk Aleph. Mamash, juxtaposed together with the previous Pasuk. So what does he say? It says, Beshishi, in the 6th month. What's the 6th month? Elul. Right? Of the king Daryavish, in the 6th month, the 2nd year, and then it says the 7th month, and it doesn't say the 3rd year. So which indicates that in the 7th month of the 2nd year of Malchut Daryavish. Now, what's 7th month? Tishrei. If you tell me that for the Goyish kings we count from Tishrei, right? Chagai, Perek Bet Pasuk Aleph should start B'Shvi'i B'Shnat Shalosh LeMalchut Daryavish, right? Doesn't. It says the same. It indicates clearly it's the same 2nd year, right? It's not like a checkmate, right? But Daryavish, who is a goy? Well, we so assume, right? So assume it would be geschmack to say that Dariavesh was the son of Esther, so it was really Jewish. You'll see it actually would maybe give some boost to the next line of the Gemara. But Dariavesh, the Goyish king, and we see from Elul going to Tishrei, the years doesn't change. It's the same second year of his Malchut. This is the Gemara. If you were right, that mitishrei maninan, it should say in the Tishrei of the third year of his kingdom, not the second. Now listen to what's happening here because you don't want to miss it. You're asking from who? From King Dariavesh, right? The King Dariavesh. He says we see Dariavesh, who is a goy. We count not from Tishrei, right? The one answer says no. You're asking from King Dariavesh. Koresh melech kasher. Koresh was a kosher king, so therefore we assume that because he was a righteous king, we deal with him, we treat him as a Jewish king, and we count from his malchut Nisan. So don't ask me from Dariavesh because Koresh was a king of Askashish. This is what says basically. I'm asking a question from Dariavesh. You tell me Koresh was a king that's kasher. Now we'll see in just a moment that Koresh is the same person as Dariavesh. And the reason he's called Koresh is, wait for it, because Koresh is, this is the Marsha says this, is the Chilufe Otiot is exchange the letters and is kasher. Right? With the Vav extra. And that the Mefarshim say because 6 years he was kasher, as we'll see in just a moment, right? For 6 years, Vav Shanim, he was kasher. Therefore, it's really Dariavesh. In his birth certificate, it said Dariavesh, but he was nicknamed Koresh because he was Melech Kasher. He was an amazing king for first 6 years. So it says in the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Abahu, Koresh Melech Kasher. He was a kosher king, and therefore, Lefichach Manulo Kemalchei Israel, and therefore we counted for him to respect him even extra. We treated him as one of ours. We treated him as one of the Jewish kings, counting for his malchut from Nisan instead of Tishrei. Where's his way? Not Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, first of all, now I had a spoiler alert, as I already said it, but the one has to go through this, right? So basically, I'm asking from Dariavesh, you tell me Koresh Melech Kasher. And also, you can't say that because I have a stira. I will prove to you that Dariavesh recounted from Tishrei. So, however you slice this is a checkmate. You're not going to find your feeding hand in the Bet Midrash with your answer. However you slice this, says the Gemara. 2 questions. Chada, first of all, is going to be contradicting psukim because you brought a raya that's not from Tishrei. Bring a raya that it is from Tishrei. Listen to this. Dichtiv, the pasuk says. This is speaking about the completion of the building of the Beit HaMikdash. V'shesi baita dina, and the building of this house, the Beit HaMikdash Hasheni, completed Adiyom Telata Le'eras Adar, right? The 3rd day of Adar. It's not Shet Lemalchut Dariavesh Malka, 6th year of Dariavesh, right? Tanya, we learned the Braita. Please keep Cheshbon in your mind. So we are in the Adar of the 6th year of Dariavesh. And we learned in the Braita, next year. You remember how we discussed yesterday that Ezra did not go up. And this whole tumult that was going on, Ezra is still learning with Baruch Ben Neriah back in Bavel because he didn't want to go on. Gemara Megillah learns that learning Torah, coming to Amud Yomi is more important than building the Beit HaMikdash, right? Next year, after Beit HaMikdash was built, Ezra, exactly a year after, Ala Ezra mi Bavel, Ezra finally traveled from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, Vegaluto imo, and all of the exile that came up with him traveled together with him as well. Steve, and it says, Vayavo Yerushalayim, so therefore, 1 year later is Adar of which year? Of Dariavesh? 7th year, right? Adar of 7th year. But that's when he went up. Vayava Yerushalayim. He's traveling from Babel to Yerushalayim. He got to Yerushalayim. Chodesh HaChamishi. Chodesh HaChamishi is what? What month is that? Av. So Adar. What's coming after Adar? Nisan. Well. Hold it right there. If Daryavesh is Melech Kasher, and we count from Nisan, so he started his travel in the Adar of the 7th year of Daryavesh. Now you hit the next month. Nisan is which year? 8th year. 8th year, right? The Targdash was completed in the Adar of the 6th year. Next year, Adar, 7th year, he starts traveling already next month. By Nisan already should be the 8th year of Daryavesh, and he didn't get there until Av, right? Of the 8th year. But it says the problem is he came to Yerushalayim b'chodesh hachamishi hishenat hashevi'it, the 7th year of Melech Daryavesh. Ve'im ita, and if you are right that we count from Nisan just like we do with the Jewish kings, not Hasheminit mibaile. It would have been the 8th year, not the 7th year. Checkmate, right? So you're telling me that we treat Daryavesh like Malchei Israel? I prove to you no. So says Gemara. The second question is like the elephant in the room. Midami hatam koresh shacha Daryavesh. I'm asking you from Daryavesh. You tell me Koresh Melech Kasher. Two different names. No, and the answer comes. Who Koresh? Who Daryavesh? Who Artach Shasta? This is really based on a pasuk. If you don't know it, you don't know it. But it's a pasuk in Sefer Ezra Perek Vav that says Daryavesh Koresh Artach Shasta, right? And Gemara says all those three that's juxtaposed in the pasuk together in Sefer Ezra are actually the same person, just like we had before by Sichon, right? Kinani, right? We had that. Here's the same thing. Koresh Shemelech Kasher Haya. That Koresh was his nickname because Koresh Kasher, right? That was his nickname because Melech Kasher Haya. Artaxasta Al Shem Malchut. Artaxasta was the name of any Persian king, just like any Egyptian king was. Pharaoh and Avimelech was a title for the other ones. Artaxasta was the Persian kings, right? It's like Ardashir in Farsi. That's what it is, right? Umashemo, and what was his birth certificate name? Daryavesh. Daryavesh Shemo. Okay, wait a second. That's great. But still, the other question is the question. You're telling me, Tishri Maninan, Minisan Maninan, which one is it? I have a pasuk that clearly says it's not from Tishrei. And I have a pasuk that clearly says it's not from Nisan. So which one is it? Rabbi Yitzchak said, "Lo kasha. It's not a question. Kan kodem sheichmitz, kan leachar sheichmitz." Beforehand was when Daryavesh still was a melech kasher, right? But from the 6th year and on, he already was not kasher anymore. Now we, generally speaking, aside from the fact that this is mind-bogglingly amazing if you say that this was actually not just the Melech Kasher, but it actually was the son of Esther, and he was kind of Jewish in that way. So we count from Nisan, we count from Tishrei, but we generally speaking deal with Daryavesh as a tremendous power and a very righteous king. He actually funded, right, and foot the bill for the building of the Beit HaMikdash. He sent troops to safeguard, not just that he gave the permission. So if you understand, one is going to ask, what exactly is the problem of him not being a Melech Kasher? We're going to be dealing with that in the upcoming food. And that's going to become the question. But the Gemara says, for now, in synopsis, this is before he was Melech, this is before when he was Melech Kasher, and afterwards, Nichmitz. He became vinegar, like wine that goes bad, it goes sour. He also went sour, and therefore, first 6 years, we count from Nisan. Because you remember, the Sukkim that we brought was from the 2nd and the 3rd year of his Malchut, right? And now that we brought that it's Muchach, that's not from Nisan, is the 7th and the 8th year of his kingdom. So you see that at some point we switched from being counting from Nisan like a Jewish king to counting from Tishrei, which is not right. Now, before we go through the second part of the history, which is fascinating, absolutely fascinating, second part of this story, I want to just tell you that this concept of Shalom Malchut, that we would count from the kings, and in every shtarot in the Gittin, we started this whole discussion from Masachet Gittin Daf Pei, that by even Gittin Nashim, even a divorce document had they have the years of the king, and all of the other financial transactions were not completed until you had in the shtar the years of the king. We said it's because of Shalom Malchut, right? And we discuss again that's not just for the Goyish king, even within the Jewish kings, we needed Shalom Malchut. But this concept of Shalom Malchut is something that we may not relate in the same way nowadays in a democratic community. But back in a day, this was a tremendously important and powerful thing. And you find in history examples that blow the minds of a reader. I'll just quickly tell you two examples. One is mentioned in Tshuvot Chatam Sofer in Choshen Mishpat in Siman Kuf Tzadi. And the story there was that the king was coming to visit the city, and one of the things that they did for respecting the king was the entire community would get together in the big shul, the Knesset Gadol, and they would have a choir. They would have a choir singing for Kavod HaMelech, all the Jewish boys, girls, men, women, and they had a question. The way they wanted to make it, because again, this was a presentation to the Goy, to the Goyish king, they wanted to have the men down in the Bet Knesset Gadol, right? As Yashir Moshe of Israel, they would sing down there, and up there, Vatan Miriam and the women and the girls would sing from up in Ezrat Nashim, and they had a question of Kol Isha. The Gemara says in Masechet Berachot Daf Kol Ba'isha Erva. You can't listen to music sang by a woman. So they asked this question to Chatam Sofer. Maran Chatam Sofer, it was the Galador, the undisputed Galador and the Posekador. And he goes on as a preface to this tshuva to give unbelievable blessings to the king and how Moshe Rabbeinu respected Paro and Achav. You find in Sefer Melachim, Aleph, Perek, Yutet and Chav, how he respected Achav, Eliyahu Hanavi, after the story of Eliyahu Bar Carmel running in front of his chariot and so on. It's unbelievable. It says this is a Goy Rasha. This is the greatest Rasha in the Jewish history, and still they had to respect him with Kavod Malchut. And Kol Sheken, that we have this Melech who is a tzaddik, a Hasid ben Hasid, is unbelievable reading. And this guy was an anti-Semite, obviously, right? So, and reading pages of Chatam Sofer speaking about how they're obligated to respect the king, and in a very serious way. It's a mind-blowing reality. But, and I wish we had time to actually read the words of Chatam Sofer, but perhaps the Nobel Prize to a literature, Jewish literature that goes to Kavod Malchut is a tshuva, not really a tshuva. It was printed as its own Jewish hesped, a eulogy that was said by Rabbi Chaskel Landau, right, aka the Nodab Yehuda, probably the undisputed Gadol Ador of his time. Actually, the Chabad Rebbe said about the Nodab Yehuda that he was the greatest mind of the Achronim of his times, and he said a whole lot more than just that. That is the sharpest, the best of the tshuvot of the Achronim in the Ashkenazi world of its time in the 1700s, and he wrote an entire hesped. They didn't just write. He wrote it. We have this the first page of 12 pages of small print of a Reader's Digest, a real must read of all time for a hesped that was held actually in the Bet Knesset Gadol of Prague. He was the Rav of Prague, and everyone was there. The new emperor, the son of this is a hesped for Maria Theresa, the empress of the time, wife of the previous emperor, the mother of Joseph, the new emperor, and it's unbelievable. You see all the Goyish officials and the army people, all the Jewish community, all the Rabbanim of the time, all the Gdolei Ador that we know they're Sfarim, they're all sitting there. They're all there, and he gives an unbelievable hesped. I mean, the words he writes in this hesped are not to be believed. And he says like a mamash, a real drasha. Tiv, he says, he reads from the pasuk in Yecheskel Perek Chav Aleph. Ben Adam, and you, Yecheskel, Me'anach b'shivron motnaim. You should sigh and scream with a broken back, merirot te'anach le'enehim, with bitter sighs. You should cry. Ve'haya ki yomru elecha al ma ata boche. Right? If they ask you, why are you like this? Ve'amarta, you should say, el shmu'a ki ba'a, for the horrible news that has come. V'kamas kolev, and every heart has been melted. V'rafu kol yadayim, all the hands are not able to work. V'fa kol ruach, v'kol birkaim. It's unbelievable. He says, and this was held 8 days after the death of the Maria Teresa. And he says, he goes for a whole page and a half. He discusses, why did I wait 8 days? It's not because I was misupak, if I should give a hesped. Right away when she passed away, I said, I'm going to do this. The reason I waited was for 3 different cheshbonot. Because first of all, I couldn't speak. I was so broken. I couldn't think. I couldn't write. I couldn't speak. Secondly, I said to myself, well, what am I going to say? I have no words. She was so great. I know. And thirdly, I was conflicted because just like, she passed away, but her son, right, the Emperor Shlita, is now the Memale Makom, and he is so awesome, so amazing. So at the same time that we're very sad, we're also so happy. Right? At Sefot, at Rekod, I want to dance someone, I'm happy. And he goes to say that it's like he uses the words of the Gemara at Shalosh Hakashim Shimsho Shel Eli, before a tzaddik goes from the world, because Baruch Hu replaces it with another tzaddik. And he says, this is awesome, the fact that we have the new emperor, King Joseph Shlita, right? And he goes on to say that he actually thought that this pasuk in Yecheskel is speaking to him, right? Because his name was Yecheskel, right? It says the pasuk is saying, Yecheskel landa you, for in the sof kol adorot, is going to be a time, it's going to be such a hesped. And you're going to ask yourself, why are you? People ask you, why are you crying? You're a Jewish person crying for this. And it goes on to say how amazing this woman was. That, it goes through the 10 pages of drasha, going through the entire Eshet Chaim. And if I would translate for you, but you don't have time for it, the words he writes there, you think he's talking about like Moshe Rabbeinu's mother or something, right? And now then you go and research who this Maria Teresa was. She was the greatest anti-Semite of all time that his country had seen. She actually signed off on an expulsion of Jews from Prague, and then extended it for years later to be extended to all the Jews of the surrounding thing that was under her memshala. She was the most powerful woman for hundreds of years before and after herself, right? And she actually was not so great. But there is a concept of Shalom Malchut. This is something that from time immemorial has been really the thing. And it's not that he was being Meshaker. It's like, you just see the virtues of the things that they actually had and focus on the virtues instead of focusing on the half empty of the cup. But this is, when you see the dafyomi of the Gemara that are dedicated to this concept of where it counts, and you gotta ask yourself, like, scratching your head, wow, who cares? Who cares this is again one of the lessons of Chazal, of Shalom Malchut, that Paro has to be respected, and Achav has to be respected not because of who they are, but because of the office that they hold. It's a concept that the Gemara says even a water carrier in his district is considered a thing of respect. You have to respect the office that they hold is a derech eretz that the Torah teaches us, and obviously There's more into Shalom Malchut that meets Tzai, as we mentioned, and Bezat Hashem will continue the second fascinating part of this story in the next shiur.